In our increasingly complex world, where major achievements usually result from the combined efforts of thousands of people, one man has shown that individual accomplishment is simple, that impossible dreams can come true.
If we wish to accomplish and to push frontiers, if we wish to seek in the outer fringes, maybe we do have to risk a little bit. And this is an individual thing. This is what each man calculates to himself. I have received training, I have received skills that I should utilize to my fullest extent. As an individual man, my effort isn't a lot. It's a grain of sand on the beach, if you will. But I must do my thing to the best of my ability. And I feel almost compelled to do it for those reasons. It's very personal.
Elgin Long, a 25,000-hour DC-8 captain with Flying Tiger, dreamed for over 20 years of being the first person to fly solo around the world over both poles. Captain Long's dream became a reality. His 28-day, 36,000-mile self-financed flight touched down on all 7 continents, set 3 world records, and earned him the Gold Air Medal, awarded only to a few select aviation heroes, including James Doolittle, Igor Sikorsky, and Charles Lindbergh. Elgin Long's courage, ability, and determination contribute to the legends of an industry and a nation, and prove that there is no such thing as an impossible dream. Impossible dream. Captain Elgin Long is today at the crossroads of his life. For 23 years, he has been telling his wife, Marie, about his dream, to be the first pilot to fly solo around the world via the North and South Poles. Long's dream comes to life at 2 p.m. on runway 28 of San Francisco International Airport as he heads for all 7 continents and the first solo flight across Antarctica. Long will be reporting back to San Francisco by a special telephone hookup. In flight over the North Pole and Timbuktu and the other exotic parts of the world he'll see from the window of his Piper Navajo as he lives a 23-year-old dream he calls Crossroads Endeavor. This is Dave McElhatton, KCBS News Radio.
Well, after talking about it for 23 years, at least over 20 years, I found myself at my own personal crossroads. My wife and family have been listening to me year by year talk about it. And I had to either do it or quit talking about it. At the time seemed right. Everything was right for me to do it now. Not only was it the crossroads of my life, let me show you on the globe. By crossing the North and the South Pole, all the meridians converge at that point, so that's the crossroads of geography. By crossing the equator over here at the prime meridian and the equator at the international date line at opposite points in the Earth, I was crossing the crossroads of time. So the flight really was truly a crossroads flight. Once I'd committed myself to the flight, the first thing I had to do was select an airplane. So I set out to find the best airplane that was in my budget, something I could afford, and I laid out what the airplane had to do for me. It was pretty formidable. I had to select an airplane that had a reliability, it had the range, it had the all-weather capability. Because imagine, to do the flight, I'm going to fly over the North Pole during the Arctic night. This means temperatures 30, 40 below zero. I'm going to fly across the Sahara deserts with temperatures to 110. But above all, the whole flight of over 36,000 miles and over 200 hours meant reliability, mechanical reliability, integrity. And this I found everybody that I checked with, the Navajo was the airplane. So I selected the Turbo Navajo to be my machine.
Crossroads endeavor is the culmination of years of planning and preparation, of studying charts and plotting routes, of getting visas and diplomatic clearances, of thorough professional analysis and evaluation of every possible contingency. Inside the Piper Navajo, 4 large fuel tanks have been installed, increasing its capacity to 623 gallons, its range to 4,000 miles. From Flying Tiger, Long obtained a polar compass, and Delco supplied and installed its carousel inertial navigation system. A navigational computer developed for the Apollo moon flights, the $100,000 INS will guide Captain Long unerringly to the 4 crossroads of the world, the crossroads of his dream. All of the necessary arrangements have been completed. All of the complicated equipment has been installed and tested. Critical spare parts have been purchased and packed, although it turned out not one spare part was needed during the entire flight. Finally, to keep awake, Long includes a $2.98 alarm clock. As friends present the captain with a good luck piece of 1,000 handmade Japanese origami paper birds, the aircraft slowly fills with luggage, spare parts, and 3,738 pounds of aviation gas, increasing its gross weight to 9,000 pounds. When the tanks have been topped off and the last piece of gear is stowed away, Elgin says goodbye to the many friends and members of the family who wish him well. They sense the drama of his departure on a flight that has never been accomplished before, taking off on one of the last great terrestrial conquests. As the door closes and he squeezes through the 8-inch wide passageway between the auxiliary fuel tanks to the cockpit, Long enters the instrument-filled space that for over 215 hours will keep him in touch with the world below. The 2 310-horsepower Lycoming engines start without hesitation. They will perform so well that from pole to pole and back to San Francisco, not even one cowl will be removed. It is 2 p.m. in the afternoon of November 5th as the heavily loaded aircraft taxis out to runway 28. Ted Thomas, in the KCBS spotter plane, reports the takeoff.
I'm just lifting off, and he's doing the same, and he's used approximately 3,000 feet of runway. Now he's accelerating off the runway, and he's climbed to about 50 feet where he's letting the airplane build up some speed. It looks like he's made a perfectly safe takeoff. That's how it looks from right here.
The weather after the takeoff out of San Francisco was beautiful. All the way up the Oregon coast, it was fine. Then I ran into a tremendous weather front. They'd warned me about it beforehand, with moderate to heavy icing conditions over the Gulf of Alaska. This was going to be a good icing test for my Navajo. It worked out very well. I did run into moderate to heavy rime and mixed clear ice over the Gulf of Alaska, but the de-icer boots and all the systems, static systems, worked perfectly. The pitot heat system worked perfectly. I had no trouble with the icing and pushed on to Fairbanks. Then after a short rest at Fairbanks, and we were ready at the first light at dawn for the first point on a crossroads flight, the North Pole, our flight across the polar ice.
Crossroads Endeavor departed Fairbanks at 6:33 in the morning on the first major leg of the trip. North of the Arctic Circle, the sun rises just enough to illuminate the quiet white peaks of the Brooks Range, then across the flat expanse of the North Slope to Point Barrow, and out over the ice pack of the Arctic Ocean, stretching away nearly 3,000 miles into the polar night.
Well, as I approached the North Pole, every second, every minute, I was getting further and further away from civilization. It's one thing to sit and look at a map, and it's another thing to get out there in a plane and fly over it. I realized I was really on my own. There was no one within hundreds of miles that could help me. And I lost communications for a while, and this even made me feel more lonely. But I was comfortable because of the aircraft systems, and also because I'd taken my winterization advice. They said, I asked them, what should I do to the airplane? They said, well, the only thing I could recommend was take an extra pair of socks. So that was all right. But as I approached the North Pole, a great sense of loneliness during the Arctic night engulfed me. Then after I crossed over the pole, of course I was elated at reaching my first point on the Crossroads flight, then I started heading towards Norway and Spitsbergen. And I got the oddest sensation. I felt that I'm going downhill. I can remember even looking at the airspeed indicator to see if I'd picked up any airspeed. And I felt after flying along for an hour or two, and I was 200 or 300 miles south of the pole, though I was on solid instruments, I felt if I could break out and see down, by now I should be able to see palm trees. But when I finally, several hours later, came up on Spitsbergen, and it was nothing but ice and snow and bleak loneliness, I realized the immensity of the ice pack that by now I was almost flown over.
The fatigue of the long Arctic night catches up with Elgin. Faced with bad weather at Stockholm, he makes a precautionary fuel stop at Tromsø, Norway. 2 short hops of under 5 hours each take him on to Stockholm and London.
Hello, Elgin.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Dave McElrath.
Hi, Dave.
How are you?
I'm fine.
Good. You're in London now?
Yes, we're in London, and we're just arrived from Stockholm.
It seemed like every leg had its peculiarities of fun and its own problems. The leg from London down to Accra was going to take me down across Europe, across Morocco, and then over the Atlas Mountains. As I passed over Marrakesh, again I ran in, can you imagine this? Going to the Sahara Desert, I run into icing conditions. And going over the Atlas Mountains, I had to climb up to 15,500 feet to have safe terrain clearance. And right with the Turbo Navajo, I climbed up to a safe altitude, crossed the Atlas Mountains, and then got rid of my ice once I got over the Sahara Desert on the other side. I crossed Algeria and down to Timbuktu. I always wanted to go to Timbuktu, so I threw it in and on down to Accra. And then, of course, Accra was I was taking off for my second point the next morning, the equator at the prime meridian.
Long arrived at his second crossroad, the intersection of 0 degrees latitude and 0 degrees longitude, 2 hours and 9 minutes after takeoff from Accra, Ghana. But this leg had just begun. In the next 12 hours and 12 minutes, he crossed the 2,000-mile expanse of the Atlantic Ocean to South America. After a routine flight of 6 hours and 15 minutes from Recife to Rio de Janeiro on the 16th of November, Elgin is joined by his wife Marie to see the sights of the city before the most demanding leg of the endeavor, the flight over the South Pole.
When we left Rio, my airplane and I, we arrived in Punta Arenas right on schedule. I had half the flight behind me, and I had to be in Punta Arenas ready to take off on the 20th of November. I had the whole flight planned, and I had a 6-day time window, if you will. I had 6 days to get across Antarctica and up to Australia. Because of the position of the sun and the moon, I had to have them both in southern declination so that they would be available for shooting. And I had to have the local hour angle of the moon at least 45 degrees to the sun so I could get a good cut, to get a good celestial fix over the trackless waste of Antarctica. So there were 6 days from the 20th to the 26th. This meant I had to be ready at Punta Arenas to go on the 20th. So far, thanks to the reliability of the Navajo, I was there on the 20th, right on schedule, and I took off within a minute or two of the time I'd planned almost 2 years in advance.
97 Yankee, do you have my clearance?
Yankee, repeat first night for departure from Punta Arenas until 0. Change to 126.7 after takeoff, over.
Roger, cleared to depart from Punta Arenas to McMurdo Sound, flight level 080, and we'll contact 126.7 after takeoff.
97 Yankee, yes, correct.
Punta Arenas Tower, 9097 Yankees, ready for takeoff.
97 Yankee, clear for takeoff.
Okay, I was airborne at 1139 for the adventure of a lifetime. Here goes nothing. Looks like blue skies up ahead, so I'm going to level off at 4,500 feet here for a while. maybe 5,000. I don't want to get into the clouds at all, and I can see exactly where I'm going. And the real bad mountain that I was worried about, I can see it just clear as a bell.
It's very difficult for people to understand what Antarctica is. I mean, it's one of the last continents that we've explored, and I was the first man who ever crossed Antarctica alone. To cross Antarctica is really an undertaking, hard to imagine. Antarctica is bigger than the United States and Europe combined, or almost bigger than the United States and Europe. To give you some idea of the size, it's almost 6 million square miles. It starts out on the coast at about little low-range mountains, 2,000 or 3,000 feet high, and it builds up to an immense polar plateau. It goes up to 13,000 feet high. It's a trackless waste. There's no roads, there's no aids, there's no rivers, there's no nothing. It's just a trackless ocean of ice and no way to navigate. This is part of the problem. Also, the South Magnetic Pole is located in that area, and also it's the coldest place in the world. In the Antarctic winter, temperatures have been recorded below 100 degrees below zero.
As an expert on Antarctica, Long is well aware of the dangers involved in this leg.
You know, I'm worried about something. My right fuel flow started acting up, and I lost my heater at the same time. And I just wonder if I lost my heater line. I don't smell gas or anything, but I've got it shut off. It's going to get awfully cold in here. I don't know if the batteries in this tape recorder or cameras or anything else will work, but I hope this electrical system keeps working, this INS keeps working, because, boy, it's the only thing that's going for me now. Well, it's going to get mighty cold, this airplane. It's down to 25 degrees in the cabin now, which isn't bad, but outside it's 27 below zero, and the inside temperature will match the outside temperature for him through. I just took a drink of water before the water all freezes. I'm not hungry or anything, I really don't care. Just get this over with.
Flying on instruments at 13,000 feet, Long's INS guides him precisely to the South Pole, as verified by the South Pole radar station. He has set his first world record, the first solo flight from pole to pole, and reached his third crossroads at 2:55 in the morning of November 22nd. With the temperature inside the cabin at 33 degrees below zero, and McMurdo still 730 miles away, exhaustion is evident in Long's voice.
Boy, I'll tell you, without this INS, this trip would have been a disaster. I wouldn't go across the street without one of these things anymore. It's been very good. Very good. I really can't complain. I don't know why the heater went out. All I can say is I sure like Lycoming. We sure got some nice engines here.
At 07:23 on November 22nd, Long touches down in a 20-knot crosswind on ice runway 7 at McMurdo Sound, 19 hours and 44 minutes after taking off from Punta Arenas. As he taxis off the runway, the entire contingent of McMurdo Base is on hand to give the warmest welcome of the trip. Thoroughly chilled and dead tired, Long is greeted by Captain Eugene Van Reeth, commander of the U.S. Naval Forces in Antarctica, and heads for 6 hours of solid sleep. Minutes later, a severe storm hits McMurdo, dropping the visibility to zero. The Navajo, already tied to heavy pallets of gasoline drums, is positioned into the wind. But fine blowing snow starts to sift into the air intakes and pitot tubes. All night long, in the light of the Antarctic summer, Navy crewmen work to keep the intakes covered with a parachute and constantly reposition the aircraft into the 60-knot winds. By morning, the gale slackens, and visibility improves enough for takeoff. Navy meteorology is forecasting deteriorating conditions, but pre-flight preparations cannot be hurried. As Long begins his thorough inspection, heaters are started to warm the engines. The auxiliary power unit is connected, and the INS alignment begins, requiring a minimum of 15 minutes. Captain Van Reeth presents Long with an Antarctic scroll and wishes him a safe journey. After making sure that everything is ready, he re-enters the plane for the 16-hour flight to Sydney, Australia. but the strain of the trip is catching up with him. In the remaining 10 days, he will be unable to make any progress against the increasing exhaustion. Now the weather is closing in. Long must be airborne before all visibility is gone. Once again, the reliable engines start without hesitation. The taxi checkoff list is complete. And the wheels begin to turn on the ice of McMurdo Sound. As Long smoothly, gently applies power, the Navajo accelerates, breaks contact with Antarctica, and climbs into the storm that is settling over McMurdo.
Okay, this is an interview with Elgin Long, and you are calling from Sydney, Australia. Is that correct?
That's right. We're at the Wentworth Hotel, beautiful Sydney, Australia.
Have you eaten your Thanksgiving meal yet?
No, we're going on for about 4 hours from now at 7:30, and they fixed up, believe it or not, the hotel's laid on a very special dinner for us, including turkey, pumpkin pie, the whole thing.
After celebrating a Thanksgiving with real meaning, Long leaves his 6th continent of touchdown and heads across the South Pacific toward Fiji and a rendezvous with history.
I wanted to duplicate with my flight as closely as possible the flight that 35 years earlier Amelia Earhart and Frederick Noonan had done on their fateful flight to Howland Island. So I planned my whole flight to utilize the sun lines as a line of position approach to Howland Island, just like they had done, and to see what happened. Of course, in my case, I'd put a hood over my INS, and all I had to do was, if nothing worked out, turn on my INS and see what went wrong. And so I wasn't in danger of becoming lost like evidently they became. I shot the lines of position. I did have a lot of trouble with thunderstorms, and she had reported overcast weather in her radio reports to the Itasca. And perhaps because of the thunderstorms, they didn't realize which side of Howland Island they were on. I don't really know. My lines of position worked out just like they should have, and though I didn't see the island because of clouds very far ahead of me, I did find the island right in front of me just like it should have been, and I think even in a rainsfall I would have picked up the island if I'd continued on my course. I really don't know what went wrong, whether he didn't have the right time or had a bad shot, but I did find Howland Island, while Amelia Earhart was unable to on that July day in 1937.
From Howland Island, now dressed much differently in the 100-degree heat, Long proceeds direct to his 4th and last crossroad, the intersection of the equator and the international dateline. In a short while, his $100,000 INS locates him over this objective, as his $2.98 alarm clock tells him it is 4:21.
Now all I got to do is get this thing to Wake Island. And at Wake at 14:07, 1407. That's 20 hours and 12 minutes. And that's the longest flight so far. That's longer than the Tromsø leg, and that's longer than the leg to McMurdo. We're approaching Tokyo now, and I'm in contact with Tokyo Approach Control. The weather's fine. I got Fujiyama dead ahead. Mother of mountains. And here we come, Tokyo. And Asia and our 7th continent. On the deck, Tokyo 0131 sharp. 0131 sharp. And we got the press and everybody here, and I better hurry.
On the 1st of December, from the 7th and last continent, Long heads for Honolulu via Wake Island because of uncertain weather.
It's been quite a flight. Elgin is now in Honolulu getting ready for the last leg. An open water flight from Honolulu to San Francisco, and he's checking in now from Hawaii. How many days have you been gone now?
Well, altogether, I think it's going to be 28 days.
And how many miles have you flown?
About 36,000.
And how many hours have you sat in that seat?
I just added it up a little while ago. I've got over 210 already, and about another 13 to go.
You'll spot Elgin Long the minute he's back in San Francisco. He'll be the only fellow in town that doesn't want to sit down. He'll be standing up for a long time.
And this is News Radio in San Francisco. KCBS News Time is 2:39. Time for a situation report now on Elgin Long, who's flying into San Francisco International Airport. Let's go to the airport and Dave McElhatton.
Elgin Long has completed his 25-year dream, Operation Crossroads. He has just touched down on the runway and is rolling out at this very moment. We can't see him from here, nor can the crowd, but we just checked with air traffic control, and they told us that he was on the Bay Tracon approach control handling, and then the word came through just moments ago he had touched down.
Elgin Long has just taxied up in front of the hangar as the Woodside Band concluded playing their salute to him. We spotted that bright orange vertical fin with the big American flag on it just seconds ago before you switched to us. He's taxied up, and here it comes. The Piper Navajo, blue and white, has become world famous, and now the crowd is waving, they're cheering, as you can hear, and there's a little sighing, too, from people who are very happy to know that he's back and all is well. Elgin will be over here in just a minute if he can wade through the crowd. I think what we ought to do is break right now, because it's obvious they're going to be taking pictures for about another 5 minutes, and then we'll have a chance to greet Elgin formally. So I'm going to wander back toward the band, and as they salute Elgin with the song, California, Here I Come. This is Dave McElhatton at San Francisco International Airport.
After dreaming about the flight for more than 20 years, planning it, it shows you that after all that time, even though I'm 44 years of age before I finally got around to it, I finally accomplished my dream. And you know, if nothing else happened from the trip, but that I encouraged some other men and women to not to give up on their dreams, but to continue with their hopes and dreams, and maybe like to steal from the poet, or as Douglas MacArthur said, youth is not a time of life, it's a state of mind. I mean, it's a matter of the will. And if I could encourage other people to do their thing and to live their dreams and accomplish their dreams and not give up on them, then it would all be very, very worthwhile. That alone would make it worthwhile.